Hello, my name is Dorothy. I'm 92 years old, and today I came here to share with you one of the most painful and at the same time most important stories of my life. A story that almost destroyed my family, that pulled the ground from under my feet, but that also showed me a strength I didn't even know existed inside me. Before I start, I want to ask you who are watching me now. Please leave your like on this video. Subscribe to the channel to help me continue sharing these stories, and tell me here in the comments where you're watching from. What city? What state? I love knowing that my story is reaching so many different places. I'll start from the beginning so you understand exactly what my life was like back then. It was the year 1968. I was 35 years old, married to Arthur for 12 years, and we had 3 beautiful children, Wesley, who was 10 years old, Nancy, who was 8, and the youngest, Adam, who was only 5 years old. We lived in a rented house in the Mill District, near the textile factory where Arthur worked. It was a simple house, 3 rooms, but it was ours. I had taken care of every corner of that house with so much love, you know? I had my gingham curtains that I had sewn myself, some fern pots on the porch, and the smell of percolator coffee that filled the whole house early in the morning. Arthur was a worker at Riverside Cotton Mill, one of the largest textile factories in the region at that time. He worked in the weaving section, operating those enormous looms that made a deafening noise all day long. It was hard work, exhausting, but it was honest. He left home every single day at 5:30 in the morning, took the lunchbox I prepared while the lamp was still on, and came back around 7 at night, tired, but always with a smile on his face for the kids. We didn't have any luxury, but we didn't lack the basics either. Potatoes, green beans, a piece of meat when we could afford it, and lots of love. I was a housewife, like most women of that time. I took care of the house, the kids, washed clothes in the washtub, ironed clothes for others to make some extra money, sewed some dresses by order. Life was hard, but it was good. You know that feeling that even with little you're building something? That your children are growing up healthy? That your husband comes home and hugs you lovingly? That you're walking together toward a better future? That's what I felt. I felt blessed. Arthur was a good man. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't hang out at bars. On Sundays, we'd go to the 10 o'clock mass, come back home. I'd make a nice lunch when we could afford it, a stewed chicken when we couldn't, macaroni with well-seasoned sauce. And the afternoon was peaceful. He'd lie in the hammock with the kids, tell stories, play. Those were simple times, but they were happy times. We had a big dream to buy our own house. Every month, religiously, we'd save a little bit. I had an old cookie tin hidden in the closet under the old sheets where I'd put the crumpled bills. $5 here, 10 there, 20 when Arthur got some overtime or when I managed to sell some more expensive sewing. In 4 years, saving like this, we had almost saved up $1,200. It wasn't much, but for us who never had anything, it was a treasure. It was our children's future. It was security. It was our dignity. It was in March 1968 that everything started to change. On a Saturday, Arthur came home from work around 7 at night, as usual, and told me, "Dorothy, the factory needs people to work overtime on Saturdays." The supervisor called me. They said they'll pay 50% more per hour. I thought it would be good for us to accept so we can save up faster for the house. I was actually happy, you know? I thought, what a blessing. The faster we save, the sooner we'll get out of this rental. And I told him, of course, "Honey, can you handle it? Won't you get too tired?" He assured me he could handle it, that it was only until 6 in the evening, just about 3 more hours on Saturday, that it wouldn't make a difference. He said several colleagues were going to do it too. I believed him, of course. Why wouldn't I? It was my husband, it was the father of my children, it was the man who had slept beside me every night for 12 years. On the first Saturday, he left home in the morning, as always, came back only around 7 at night, arrived tired, took a shower, had dinner, and went to sleep. Everything normal. On the second Saturday, the same thing. I even mentioned to the neighbor, Mrs. Geraldine, "Arthur is doing overtime on Saturdays now. It's going to be good for us to save for the house. She thought it was great, said her husband also did overtime whenever possible. But then, on the third Saturday, something strange happened. Arthur came back very late. It must have been around 10:30, almost 11 at night. I was already worried, walking back and forth in the living room. The kids were already asleep. When he arrived, I immediately asked, "My God, Arthur, what happened? Why so late?" He seemed different, his eyes kind of glazed, his shirt wrinkled, and there was a strange smell, the smell of cigarettes. But Arthur didn't smoke, never smoked. He gave a clumsy excuse. "There was a problem with the machine, Dorothy. A loom broke down, and we had to stay until it was fixed. The supervisor asked us not to leave until it was resolved. Sorry I didn't let you know. There was no way to send word. It made sense, right? Back then there were no phones at home. To let someone know something, you had to send someone or wait to get there." I accepted the explanation, but I was left with that nagging doubt because of the cigarette smell. But I thought, he must have been near someone who smoked. I let it go. But then it became routine. Every Saturday, Arthur would leave in the morning and come back later and later. 8 at night, 9, 10. There was one Saturday he arrived almost midnight, and always with that cigarette smell, always with wrinkled clothes, always with a different excuse, that the machine broke, that they had to do inventory, that the supervisor asked to organize the stock, that there was a safety meeting. And worse, he was changing, becoming more nervous, more irritable. Any little thing the kids did, and he'd already be yelling. If I asked too much about work, he'd get impatient. There was one night I commented, "Wow, Arthur, but is this overtime really every Saturday? Isn't there a Saturday off?" He almost exploded. "Dorothy, do you want our own house or not? Then let me work in peace. Isn't it enough that I kill myself all week at the factory? I still have to hear complaints at home." I went quiet, even scared. Arthur had never spoken to me like that, never. I started to suspect something was wrong. But what? Cheating? No, impossible. Arthur loved me. We had a beautiful family, and he had always been so upright, so hardworking, so dedicated. Then I started noticing other things. His wedding ring, that gold ring we had bought with so much sacrifice when we got married, disappeared from his finger. When I asked, he said he had hurt his hand at work, and the doctor told him to take it off so it wouldn't get infected, that the ring was stored in the closet. I went looking. It wasn't anywhere. The pocket watch that belonged to his father, my father-in-law who had already passed away, a family heirloom, also disappeared. He said he had taken it to be fixed because it was stopping. A month passed, 2 months, and the watch never came back from repair. I went to the cookie tin where we kept the money. There was less money than there should be, much less. I knew exactly how much there was because I controlled it myself, wrote it down in a notebook. Almost $300 were missing. I confronted Arthur. He said he had taken it to pay some extra factory expenses that they would return in next month's salary, but they never returned it. I started having insomnia. I'd lie in bed, looking at the ceiling, listening to Arthur snoring beside me and that anguish squeezing my chest. What was happening? Where was the money going? Why was my husband lying? Why was he so different, so aggressive, so distant? The neighbors started talking. Mrs. Geraldine called me one day at the gate and said quietly, "Dorothy, I don't want to meddle, but Arthur has been arriving very late these Saturdays, hasn't he? Do you know where he is?" I defended my husband tooth and nail. "He's doing overtime, Mrs. Geraldine, to save for the house." She made a face but didn't say anything else, but I saw in her look. She was doubting. She thought there was another woman. And you know what's worse? I started to think so too. I started imagining my husband in the arms of another, a younger one, prettier, without 3 kids, and without stretch marks on her belly, one who didn't spend all day smelling like soap and bleach. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a tired 35-year-old woman who already looked 45, with calloused hands from washing so many clothes, with hair tied in a tight bun because I didn't even have time to take care of myself. Did he find someone else? I thought every night before sleeping and cried into the pillow quietly so he wouldn't hear. Until that Saturday came, the Saturday that changed everything. It was September 14th, 1968. I'll never forget that date. It was the day the ground disappeared from under my feet. That morning, Arthur left for work, as always, around 5:30, but he forgot his lunchbox on the table. I saw the lunchbox there still warm, wrapped in the checkered cloth, and thought, he's going to be all day without eating. Back then there were no diners on the corner, no place to buy food easily like that. If the worker didn't take his lunchbox, he'd go hungry. I took the lunchbox and decided I would personally take it to him at the factory. I left the kids with Mrs. Geraldine, put on my nicest dress, and went. I arrived at the factory. It was around 9 in the morning. The gate was open, and there at the guardhouse was Mr. Benedict, the watchman. He was an elderly gentleman, about 60-something years old, always very polite, who knew all the workers by name. I approached and said, "Good morning, Mr. Benedict. I came to bring the lunchbox for Arthur." He forgot it at home. Mr. Benedict looked at me with a strange face. Then he smiled and said, "Good morning, Mrs. Dorothy. Can you leave it here with me, and when he comes out for lunch, I'll give it to him?" "No need, Mr. Benedict. I'll deliver it myself since I came all this way." He scratched his head, kind of awkward, and said, "It's just that now you can't go in, ma'am. The sector is in operation, but let me deliver it. You can leave it." I thanked him, handed over the lunchbox, and was already turning to leave when, unintentionally, I let it slip. "He'll be so happy. Good thing I had time to bring it before the overtime starts this afternoon." That's when Mr. Benedict frowned and asked, "Overtime? What overtime, Mrs. Dorothy?" My heart skipped a beat. "The Saturday overtime. Arthur is doing it every Saturday here. Mr. Benedict looked me in the eyes, and I saw that look of pity, you know? That look of someone who's going to give bad news and doesn't know how to say it. He sighed deeply and said, "Mrs. Dorothy, there's no overtime on Saturdays here. The factory operates from 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening on Saturday. Reduced hours. At 6 o'clock sharp, I close this gate and nobody stays inside. Arthur leaves every Saturday at 6 o'clock sharp with his crew. I see him passing through this gate every week." The world stopped at that moment. I stood there, holding my purse strap so hard that my fingers turned white. I couldn't breathe right, couldn't think, could only hear my heart beating in my ear like a drum. "What do you mean, Mr. Benedict?" I managed to speak, my voice coming out shaky, but he said he was doing overtime. He gets home at 10, 11 at night. Mr. Benedict shook his head slowly, with that look of pity even more pronounced. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Dorothy, but not here. If Arthur is getting home at that hour, he's going somewhere else after he leaves here. I don't know how I managed to walk home. I think I went on autopilot. My legs shaky, my vision blurred, my heart tight. Another place. He was going to another place. Where? With whom? Doing what? Cheating. It had to be cheating. What other explanation could there be? My husband was cheating on me. And worse, he had been cheating on me for months, looking me in the eyes and lying shamelessly, taking our hard-earned money, selling his wedding ring, disappearing until midnight. When I got home, I picked up the kids from Mrs. Geraldine's and locked the door. I sat on the bed and cried. I cried so much I don't even know where so many tears came from. I cried from anger, from sadness, from humiliation. How could he do this to me? Not to me, to us, to his children. How did he have the courage to look at me every day, to lie in our bed, to sit at our table, knowing he was deceiving me? The kids came in running, coming back from Mrs. Geraldine's house. Adam, the youngest, came running and jumped in my lap. Mom, we played hide and seek today and I won." I hugged my son, felt his little smell, that smell of a child who played all day. I kissed his little head. How was I going to let that monster threaten my babies? How? "That's great, my love. You're very smart." Wesley came after, more serious. He was finding it strange. I noticed in his look. He was a child, but he was smart. He was noticing something was very wrong. "Mom, why are you working so much? It's to save some extra money, my son, so we can buy nice things for you." He looked at me with those big eyes, doubting, but didn't insist. Thank God he didn't insist, because if he had, I don't know if I could have held back the tears. I made a quick dinner, potatoes, green beans, and fried egg. That's what we had. I put the kids to eat. Arthur arrived from work, sat at the table, but barely touched the food. He was getting worse every day, thinner, more dejected, more absent. It was like watching someone die slowly in front of you. After dinner, I bathed the kids, put them to bed, and then I went to the living room, 5 baskets of clothes to wash. I lit the lamp because it was already dark. The water from the tap was freezing. It was winter, September. The nights were cold, but I couldn't wait for the sun to rise. I didn't have time. I scrubbed, wrung, rinsed one piece after another. My hands were raw. There were wounds between my fingers from scrubbing clothes on the stones so much. It hurt every time I dipped my hands in the water, but I kept going. I had to keep going. That Saturday was the longest of my life. Every minute seemed like an hour. Every hour seemed like a whole day. I stayed there in the living room, sitting in that old rocking chair that had been my mother's, looking at the wall clock that went tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. Every second that passed was a hammer blow to my head. I bathed the kids, gave them dinner, put them to bed. Wesley still asked, "Mom, isn't Dad going to have dinner with us today?" "No, my son, he's working. He'll be home later." Working. What a lie, right? But I still didn't know if it was my lie or his. Could I be wrong? Could Mr. Benedict be confused? But no, he was clear. 6 in the evening the gate closes. Everyone leaves. Arthur leaves at 6. So where was he going from 6 to 10, 11 at night? I prayed. I prayed so much that night. I took my rosary, the one I had received from my mother when I got married, and stayed there praying Hail Mary after Hail Mary. I asked Our Lady to give me strength, to give me wisdom to deal with whatever came ahead. I asked that it not be what I was thinking. I asked that there be an explanation, a good explanation, an explanation that wouldn't destroy my family. 9 at night, nothing. 9:30, nothing. 10 o'clock, nothing. I was starting to get desperate. I started walking back and forth in the living room. I opened the door, looked at the dark street, closed the door, opened it again, closed it. My stomach was churning. I had only eaten a small piece of bread all day. I couldn't swallow anything. 10:30 at night, I heard the sound of the gate. My heart raced. It was him. I took a deep breath, dried my sweaty hands on my apron, and stood there in the middle of the living room, waiting. Arthur came in. And you know what I saw? I saw a man who wasn't my husband. He looked like him, had his face, his body, but it wasn't him. His eyes were red, sunken, with purple bags underneath, his clothes all wrinkled, his shirt untucked, his hair disheveled, and that smell, that horrible smell of cigarettes mixed with sweat, with something sour, with beer maybe, and something else I couldn't identify. He looked at me, and for a second, just 1 second, I saw fear in his eyes. But soon he looked away, hung his hat on the coat rack, and tried to go straight to the bedroom. Arthur. My voice came out firm but trembling. He stopped, still with his back to me. "Dorothy, I'm tired. Let's talk tomorrow." "No, we're going to talk now. Turn here and look at me." He turned slowly, and I saw it. I saw on his face that he knew that I knew. He didn't know everything yet, but he knew I had discovered something. "Where were you, Arthur?" "At work, Dorothy, I already told you." "Overtime. Don't lie to me." My voice came out louder than I wanted. I lowered my tone for fear of waking the kids. "Don't lie to me anymore. I went to the factory this morning. I spoke with Mr. Benedict. He told me there's no overtime on Saturdays, that the factory closes at 6 in the evening, that you leave on time with everyone." His face turned white as paper. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He looked like a fish out of water. He ran his hand over his face, through his hair, and started trembling. His hands were shaking. "Dorothy, You what? Are you with another woman? Is that it? Do you have someone else? Tell me now. Tell me the truth at least once." I was screaming, tears streaming down my face. 12 years of marriage, 3 children, a lifetime built together. And all a lie, all fake? "No," he shouted back. "It's not that. There's no other woman." "Then what is it? Where do you go every Saturday? What do you do until midnight? Why have you been lying to me for months?" He was silent, just stood there, trembling, with that look of desperation. And then I started saying everything that was stuck in my throat. The ring disappeared. Your father's watch disappeared. The money in the tin is disappearing. You're different, nervous, aggressive with the kids, with me. You come home smelling like cigarettes when you don't smoke. You look me in the eyes and lie, Arthur. Every single day you lie. If it's not another woman, then what is it? What is it that's so bad you can't tell me? That's when he collapsed. Literally collapsed. His legs gave out, and he fell to his knees on the living room floor, started crying like a child, sobbing loudly, with his hands on his face. I had never seen Arthur cry. Not when his father died, not when Nancy was born and almost didn't survive because she was without air. Never. Dorothy, forgive me, for the love of God. I stood there, looking at that destroyed man on my living room floor. Half of me wanted to run, hug, console. The other half wanted to kick, scream, hit. I did nothing, just waited. He lifted his face with tears streaming, red eyes, and started talking. And what he said was worse, much worse than any cheating I could imagine. I'm gambling, Dorothy. Gambling. That word hung in the air between us. Gambling. I didn't understand at first. Gambling what? Cards, dice, betting on cockfights. Cockfights, my God in heaven. Cockfighting. Those illegal rooster fights that happened in basements, in the back of bars, where men bet money and the animals fought to the death. I had heard about it. Everyone in the neighborhood knew it existed, but it was for people of the worst kind. Violent people, criminals, drunks, gamblers. It wasn't a place for a family man. It wasn't a place for a decent man. What do you mean cockfighting? What do you mean gambling? I could barely believe what I was hearing. He continued, the words coming out stumbling, mixed with sobs. It started about 8 months ago. A colleague from the factory, Raymond, invited me to go watch a cockfight. Just watch, Dorothy, just to see what it was like. I went. I thought there was no problem. It was in a basement there on Station Street. There were a lot of people betting, shouting, drinking. I just stood watching. But then I came back the next Saturday and the next, and then I started betting. My head was spinning. 8 months. 8 months he had been lying to me. 8 months frequenting that den. I started betting small, $5, $10, and I was winning, Dorothy. I was winning almost every week. I'd come home with more money than I left with. I thought I'd be able to save faster for the house, that it would be good for us. You thought it would be good? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Lying to me, frequenting a criminal place, throwing money away, would be good. But I was winning. He spoke desperately, as if that justified anything. In the first few weeks, I was winning a lot. I won $200 in one night. And where's that money? Where? Because there's no money coming into this house. It's only disappearing. He lowered his head again. I lost. I started losing. I thought I'd recover. I'd bet more to try to recover what I'd lost. And I'd lose more. And I'd bet more. And I'd lose more. I felt my legs weaken. I held onto the edge of the table so I wouldn't fall. How much? My voice came out in a whisper. How much did you lose? He was silent. His silence was worse than any answer. How much, Arthur? Everything, he whispered. I lost everything, Dorothy. Everything. That word echoed in my head. Everything. I staggered to the chair and sat. My hands were freezing. The tin. I managed to speak. The money in the tin, the $200 we saved in 4 years. Did you take it? He nodded without being able to look me in the eyes. When? How much is left? It's been gone for 3 months. 3 months. 3 months our money had been gone, and he hadn't told me anything. He kept leaving every Saturday, kept coming back late, kept lying. And the ring and your father's watch. I pawned them, he confessed, at the pawn shop there on the square. I got $60 for the ring and $80 for the watch. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. That ring we had chosen together, that he had placed on my finger on our wedding day, that watch that was the only memory he had of his father, that my father-in-law had left him on his deathbed, asking him to take care of it, to pass it on to his children one day, all pawned, all thrown away. Why? To bet on cockfighting, to play cards with bums. And that's not all. He continued. And I realized there was more. There was always more. I also took the tools, the hammer, the wrench, that toolbox you gave me for my birthday last year. I sold it to Tony from the junkyard for $40. The tools, those tools he used to do side jobs on weekends, to fix things at home, to earn extra money, sold for a measly $40. But there's more, Dorothy. There's more, and it's worse. I looked at him, and I don't know where I still got the strength to ask. What could be worse than this, Arthur? What could be worse than you throwing away 4 years of savings, selling everything we had of value, lying to me for 8 months? He raised his eyes to me, and at that moment, I saw something that terrified me. It was pure terror, real terror in his eyes. I'm in debt. My heart stopped. In debt to whom? To Joe. Joe. I knew that name. Everyone in the neighborhood knew it. Joe wasn't a person. He was a nightmare. He was the most dangerous loan shark in the region, the man who lent money with absurd interest, and when you didn't pay, he'd send his thugs to break your legs. Or worse, there were stories of people who had disappeared for not paying Joe. Stories of entire families who had lost everything, the house, the furniture, everything, because they couldn't pay. Did you borrow money from Joe? I could barely pronounce the words. Are you crazy? Are you completely crazy, Arthur? I thought I'd be able to pay quickly. I thought I'd win and pay. How much do you owe him? The silence was deafening. He was shaking so much his teeth were chattering. Speak, Arthur. How much? $2,400. The world stopped. $2,400. That was almost 8 months of his salary. It was double everything we had saved in 4 years. It was money we didn't have, money we'd never have. It was impossible. How did you manage to owe that much money? It started with $300. I borrowed $300 5 months ago. He charges 20% interest per month. I couldn't pay the first month. Then it became $360. Then it became $432. Then I borrowed more to try to pay the first loan to buy time. He lent me another $600. Then it was $960 in total. And the interest kept running and I borrowed more, and now it's at $2,400. He had entered an endless nightmare. It was like quicksand. The more he tried to get out, the deeper he sank. And the deadline? When do you have to pay? I'm already late, he whispered. I should have paid last week. My whole body started shaking. Late. He was late on the payment to Joe. Joe who had legs broken. Joe who made people disappear. Has he come after you already? Arthur nodded, and I saw a tear run down his face. Yesterday he sent 2 thugs to wait for me at the factory exit. They took me to the old warehouse near the station. Joe was there. He said, he's giving me 15 more days. Only 15 days, Dorothy. If I don't pay by then, he said he'll come here to the house, that he'll take whatever we have, furniture, clothes, everything. And if there's nothing worth taking, he said he'd break my legs, and then he'd come after you and the children to teach me a lesson. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. That man, that monster, had threatened my children, my babies. Adam was 5 years old. 5 years old. And there was a loan shark threatening my family because of my husband's idiotic bets. I got up from the chair, went to the bedroom, opened the closet, and took out the cookie tin. That tin that had held our dreams. I opened it. Empty. Completely empty. Not a bill, not a coin, nothing. I shook the tin upside down. Only a small piece of paper fell out. It was a pawn ticket, wedding ring. I went back to the living room. Arthur was still there, huddled, pathetic. "The bank account," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "We had a small savings account at the bank. We had about $150. Is it still there?" He shook his head. "I used it all a month ago. $150 I had saved penny by penny selling homemade jam at the farmer's market. Gone." I sat down again, put my hands on my head, tried to think, but couldn't. Everything was jumbled. Fear, anger, desperation, sadness, everything together, all at once. 15 days, I said, more to myself than to him. 15 days to get $2,400, or this man comes here and destroys our family. Dorothy, I don't know what to do. I ruined everything. I destroyed everything. You were right to call me crazy. I am crazy. I'm an idiot. Shut up. I interrupted, and my voice came out cold, icy. Now you're going to shut that mouth and let me think. He went quiet. I closed my eyes. $2,400. 15 days. Where was I going to get that money? Who did I know who had that money? Nobody. We were poor. Our neighbors were poor. Our family was poor. Nobody I knew had $2,400 saved to lend just like that out of nowhere. And even if they did, for what? To pay a gambling debt. A debt Arthur had made alone, without consulting me, lying to me. Who would want to get involved in this mess? I thought about running away, taking the children and running, going to my sister's house in another city. But Joe was powerful. He had people everywhere. He'd find us, and then it would be worse. I thought about going to the police. But what for? Report that my husband owed money to a loan shark? The police wouldn't do anything. They'd laugh in my face, or worse, they'd warn Joe. Because everyone knew that half the cops in town got money from him. There was no way out. We were cornered. Arthur had put us in a trap with no exit. I opened my eyes and looked at him, at that man I had loved for 12 years. That man I had chosen to be the father of my children. That man who had now put our entire family in mortal danger. "You're going to stop gambling," I said with a firmness I didn't even know existed inside me. "From today, you're not going to that basement anymore. You're going to work, you're going to come straight home, and you're going to give me every cent of your salary. Every cent, understood?" He nodded quickly. Yes, I promise. I swear I'll never do it again, Dorothy. I swear. And I'm going to find a way. I continued. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to find a way to get that money, because I'm not going to let that monster enter this house. I'm not going to let him lay a finger on my children. Did you hear me? I'm not going to let him. I got up from the chair, walked past him without looking, and went to the bedroom. I locked the door, lay on the bed, and stared at the dark ceiling. And there, in that darkness, while I listened to Arthur crying in the living room, I started making plans, impossible plans, desperate plans. But plans because now it wasn't about the money that was lost. It wasn't about the broken trust. It wasn't about the lies anymore. Now it was survival. It was about protecting my children, and I was going to do that. Even if it cost me the last hair on my head, I was going to save my family or die trying. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed all night lying in bed, with my eyes open, looking at the ceiling, doing math in my head. $2,400, 15 days, $160 per day. It was impossible, completely impossible. Arthur's salary was $300 a month. Even if I took his entire salary for the next months, it wouldn't be enough. And we needed to eat, needed to pay rent, needed to survive. When the sun started to rise, I got up, washed my face with cold water, tied my hair very tight, put on my simplest dress, and went to the kitchen. Arthur had slept in the living room, or at least had stayed there all night, because when I passed, he was curled up on the old couch, still in yesterday's clothes, red and swollen eyes. I didn't say anything to him. I made coffee, woke up the kids, gave them breakfast. It was Sunday. Normally we'd go to Mass, but that Sunday I wasn't going. I had more important things to do. I had to start chasing that money. After the kids finished eating, I called Wesley, the oldest. "My son, you're going to stay here taking care of your siblings today. Mom needs to go out to take care of some things. But Mom, today is Sunday. Aren't you going to Mass?" "Not today, my love. Stay here playing with them. Don't let them leave the house, and if anything happens, call me at Mrs. Geraldine's house." I took my purse, that worn leather purse I'd had for years, and left. First stop, my sister's house, Valerie. She lived about a 20-minute walk from there, in a neighborhood a little better than ours. Her husband, Oscar, was a manager at a fabric store and earned more than Arthur. They didn't have children, so they could save money. If anyone could help me, it was them. I knocked on the door. Valerie opened it still in her robe with a sleepy face. "Dorothy, what are you doing here so early on a Sunday? I need to talk to you. It's urgent." She let me in, offered coffee, but I refused. I went straight to the point. I told her everything, really everything. The bets, the lies, the debt, Joe's threats. I saw my sister's face changing as I spoke. First surprise, then horror, then something that looked like disgust. When I finished, she was silent for a while. Then she sighed deeply and said, "Dorothy, you've always been smart, always been the sensible one in the family. How did you let it get to this point?" That hurt. It hurt because it was true. How had I let it? How hadn't I noticed before? "I didn't know, Valerie. He deceived me for 8 months. You should have suspected. A man who arrives late every Saturday smelling like cigarettes. Obviously something was wrong." I swallowed my tears. It wasn't time to defend myself. It was time to ask for help. "Valerie, I need money lent. I know you and Oscar have a reserve. I promise I'll pay it back. I'll work day and night. I'll do whatever it takes. But I'll pay. Just lend me, please." She looked away, and I already knew the answer before she even opened her mouth. "Dorothy, I can't. It's too much money. And even if I had it, what guarantee do I have that you'll be able to pay? What if Arthur keeps gambling? What if he takes the money you get and loses it all again?" He promised. He stopped. He swore. A gambler's promise isn't worth anything, Dorothy. You know that. I knew. Deep down I knew, but didn't want to believe. So what do I do? Let Joe come to my house? Let him threaten my children? You should have thought about that before marrying a weak man. That was like a punch in the stomach. Weak man. That's how she saw Arthur. And maybe she was right. A strong man wouldn't gamble away the family's future on bets. A strong man wouldn't lie to his wife for months. A strong man wouldn't cry huddled on the couch while his wife ran around for a solution. I got up, took my purse, and headed for the door. Valerie followed me. "Dorothy, wait. I'm really sorry, but I can't risk my home's security because of your husband's mistakes. You understand, don't you? Understand?" I understood, but it hurt just the same. It was my sister, my own sister, and she was turning her back on me. I left that house with my heart even tighter than when I entered. First attempt. Total failure. I went to Mrs. Agatha's house, an elderly lady who lived alone, widowed, who had a good pension from her husband who had been a railroad worker. She had always been kind to me, always praised my jams when I sold them at the market. I knocked on the door. She received me with that kind smile of hers, offered me a glass of lemonade. I drank, thanked her, and then told a summarized version. I said Arthur had been sick, that he had lost days of work, that we needed a loan to pay some overdue bills. Mrs. Agatha listened to me attentively, nodding her head with pity. When I finished, she placed her wrinkled hand on mine and said, "My daughter, if I could help you, I would, but my pension barely covers me. I take expensive heart medication. I have to pay the lady who comes to clean the house twice a week. There's nothing left at the end of the month. If it were $50, $100, I'd manage. But $2,400? That's a fortune, daughter. A fortune. Another door closed, another hope destroyed. I spent the whole Sunday like that, house to house, person to person, neighbors, acquaintances, everyone with the same answer. I don't have it, I can't. It's too much money, I'm sorry. Some people were polite, others not so much. There was one neighbor, Mrs. Lawrence, who told me bluntly, "You people get involved with the wrong people, now figure it out yourselves." I worked too hard to throw my money away paying gambling debts. I got home at the end of the afternoon, empty-handed and with a destroyed heart. Not $1, not one promise, nothing. Arthur was sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. The kids were playing in the yard. When I came in, he looked up at me, hopeful. "Did you get anything?" I shook my head. I saw hope die in his eyes, too. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat with paper and pencil and started doing math. If I sewed day and night, how many dresses could I make per day? 2, maybe 3, if I didn't sleep. Each dress I sold for $15. 3 dresses a day was $45 a day. In 15 days, $675. It wasn't even half of what I needed. What if I made sweets to sell? Jam, coconut candy, cake? How much could I make? How much could I sell? Another $300, $400 maybe. Still missing a lot. A lot. What if I washed clothes? The ladies paid $5 per basket of washed and ironed clothes. If I washed 10 baskets a day, $50. In 15 days, $750. Adding it all up, it came to about $1,800 maybe. Still missing $600. But wait, I couldn't do all that. There was no way to sew 3 dresses, make sweets, and wash 10 baskets of clothes all in the same day. There weren't enough hours, there wasn't enough energy. I was human, not a machine. I started crying right there with the paper full of impossible math in front of me. It was impossible. There was no way. We were lost. Arthur came into the kitchen, saw me crying, and came to sit beside me. He tried to put his hand on my shoulder, but I pulled away. I didn't want his touch, didn't want his consolation. He had done this to us. He had put us in this situation. He had no right to console me now. On Monday morning, I got up before the sun rose, made coffee, woke Arthur, prepared his lunchbox. He was going to work. He had to work. We needed every cent of his salary. When he left, I took an old notebook and made a list of all the ladies I knew who might need a seamstress or laundress. I left the kids at Mrs. Geraldine's house, promised I'd pick them up before lunchtime, and left knocking door to door. First house, Mrs. Mercedes, wife of the pharmacy owner. She received me at the back door, the servants' entrance. I explained I needed extra work, that I could sew, wash, iron, clean, whatever she needed. She looked me up and down and replied, "I already have Rita who comes twice a week. I'm not needing anyone else." I tried to insist. I said I could charge less, that I could do anything. She shook her head and closed the door. Second house, Mrs. Carmen, who had 4 young children and always had piles of clothes to wash. She thought for a bit and said, "Look, I can give you about 3 baskets of clothes per week. I pay $5 per basket. Can you handle it? $15 per week, $60 a month." It was better than nothing. I accepted on the spot. Third house, Mrs. Ophelia, rich widow who lived alone in a huge house. She received me in the living room, rare thing, even offered me a little coffee. I told her I needed work, that I sewed very well, that I could make clothes, alterations, whatever she needed. She thought for a bit and said, "Do you know how to sew with a machine?" "Yes, Mrs. Ophelia. I've been sewing since I was a girl. I have some old dresses that need to be altered. They're out of fashion. Can you modernize them, change the cut, those things?" "I can, yes, ma'am." "Great. I'll give you 6 dresses to alter. I pay $20 per dress, but I need them in a week. Can you do it?" $120. My heart skipped a beat. It was good. It was very good. I can, yes, Mrs. Ophelia. You can count on me to have it ready. I left there with the 6 dresses wrapped in brown paper, feeling for the first time in days a tiny bit of hope. I spent the rest of the morning knocking on more houses. I got 2 more sewing orders, an embroidered tablecloth for $30, and a First Communion dress for $45. At the end of the day, I did the math. $210 guaranteed for the next 2 weeks. Adding with what I already did normally, it came to about $350. It was still far, very far, but it was a start. I got home and found Arthur already there. He had come straight home from work for the first time in months. He was sitting on the couch, looking at nothing. The kids were playing on the floor. When he saw me, he asked, "Did you get work?" I showed him the dresses, the orders. He nodded but didn't say anything. He looked like a zombie, a ghost, as if his soul had left his body and only the empty shell remained. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat at the sewing machine. It was an old pedal machine that had been my mother's. The noise from it was loud. It would wake everyone up, but there was no way around it. I had 1 week to make 6 dresses. I had to start now. I stayed sewing until 2:30 in the morning. My eyes were burning, my back hurt, my feet hurt from pedaling the machine so much. But I couldn't stop. I didn't have time to stop. At 2:30 I collapsed in bed, and at 5 I was up again. I made coffee, prepared breakfast for the kids, took them to Mrs. Geraldine's house again. She was starting to look at me kind of strange. "Dorothy, is everything okay? You look terrible." "Everything's fine, Mrs. Geraldine." "It's just that I'm taking some extra work and it's been tough." She didn't insist, but I saw in her look that she didn't believe me. I spent the day washing Mrs. Carmen's clothes, 3 huge baskets. I scrubbed on the washboard stone until my hands were raw. The cold water from the tap made my hands hurt, but I didn't stop. I washed, wrung, hung it on the clothesline. Then I took the coal iron, that heavy iron you heat on the wood stove, and ironed piece by piece. It took 4 hours to finish everything. I went home, picked up the kids, made dinner, bathed them, put them to bed, and then went back to the sewing machine. 3 more hours sewing. When I went to sleep, it was almost 2 in the morning again. This became my routine. Sleep 3 hours a night, get up before sunrise, work all day, sew all night, eat just enough not to faint. Black coffee most of the time, sometimes a piece of bread, rarely a real meal, because the food had to be for the kids. On the 4th day of this routine, while I was washing clothes at the wash tub, I had a dizzy spell. The world started spinning. I held onto the edge of the wash tub so I wouldn't fall. I took a deep breath. It passed. I kept washing. On the 6th day, I fainted. It was only for a few seconds. I was ironing, and suddenly I was on the floor. The iron had fallen near me, burning the wooden floor. I got up quickly, turned off the iron, cleaned the floor. Nobody had seen. The kids were playing in the yard. Arthur had just arrived from work and was in the bathroom. I couldn't faint. I didn't have time for weakness, didn't have time for illness. I had to continue. Arthur was, I don't even know how to describe. He was there, but it was like he wasn't. He'd go to work, come back, sit on the couch, stay looking at nothing. He barely spoke to the kids, barely spoke to me, ate little, slept little. It was like he was dying inside. I should have felt sorry, but I didn't. I felt anger at him for putting us in that situation, anger at him for being there feeling sorry for himself while I was killing myself working, anger at him for being weak, for being a liar, for destroying our family. A week passed, 7 days of the 15-day deadline. I had managed to get $280. I had delivered Mrs. Ophelia's dresses, she loved them, paid me right away, and even gave me 3 more dresses to alter. I had finished the embroidered tablecloth and the First Communion dress. I had washed and ironed 5 baskets of clothes. $280. There was still $2,120 missing. I was starting to panic. Even if I killed myself working, even if I didn't sleep at all, even if I worked 24 hours a day, there wouldn't be time. It wouldn't be enough. That's when I had an idea, a terrible idea, an idea I swore I'd never consider. But desperation makes you think impossible things. Mrs. Isabella, the rich lady who lived in the upper part of town. She always bought my jams at the market, had always been polite to me, always treated me well, and she had money, lots of money. Her husband was a lawyer, one of the most important in town. If I asked to borrow from her, if I explained the situation, would she lend me? Would she have mercy on me? But how was I going to explain? How was I going to look at that woman and say my husband had gambled our future away on cockfighting, that we owed a dangerous loan shark, that my children were being threatened? The humiliation would be enormous. But what else could I do? I had to try, had to exhaust all possibilities. On the 8th day, I put on my least worn dress, combed my hair carefully, tried to hide the dark circles with a little rice powder, and went to Mrs. Isabella's house. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would explode in my chest. I knocked on the door. A maid opened. I asked if I could speak with Mrs. Isabella. The maid looked me up and down, kind of suspicious, but went to call her. Mrs. Isabella appeared at the door with a nice dress, her hair done, a pearl necklace around her neck. She smiled when she saw me. "Dorothy, what a surprise. Come in, come in." She took me to a small sitting room. She offered coffee, cookies. I accepted because my stomach was empty. I started talking about small talk. I asked how she was, how the family was. She answered everything in that polite way of hers. And then I took a deep breath and told her. I told her everything. I didn't lie. I didn't omit anything. I told her about the debt, the bets, the threats. I saw her face changing as I spoke. The polite smile disappeared, was replaced by something that looked like disgust, pity, disdain. I don't know. When I finished, she was silent for a long time, then sighed and said, "Dorothy, I'm really sorry for what you're going through, but it's a very delicate situation, very complicated. I can't just lend such a large amount to pay a gambling debt. You understand, don't you? What if your husband keeps gambling? What if he takes the money and loses it again? I can't risk my money like that." It was the same thing my sister had said, that everyone had said. Nobody trusted, nobody wanted to help, and I couldn't even blame them. If I were in their place, I'd probably do the same. "Please," I begged. And I didn't care that I was begging. My pride had left long ago. "Please, Mrs. Isabella, my children. This man threatened my children. I'll pay every cent. I'll work as much as needed, but help me, please." I saw something pass through her eyes. For a second, just 1 second, I thought she was going to say yes. But then she shook her head. "I can't, Dorothy. I really can't, but I can give you more work. I can give you clothes to wash, sewing to do. I can help you like that, and I can pay you in advance if you want. But lend that whole amount I can't. Work." She could give me work. More work that I'd barely be able to do because I was already working 20 hours a day, but it was better than nothing. I had to accept. I left there with 5 baskets of clothes to wash and 4 dresses to sew. She paid me in advance, $110. I thanked her, held back the tears, and left. $390. There was still 2010 missing. 7 days, 1 week, 168 hours, 10,080 minutes. That's all I had left to get $2,010. $2,010 that seemed like $2 million. That seemed impossible. That seemed like the end of the world. I got home that afternoon carrying the 5 baskets of clothes and the 4 dresses from Mrs. Isabella. My arms hurt so much I could barely hold everything. I put them on the living room floor and looked around. Our simple little house, our old furniture, our humble belongings. Was there anything here I could sell? I started walking through the house, opening drawers, looking inside the closet, looking for anything that had any value. The sewing machine? No. Without it, I couldn't work. The pots? No. We needed to eat. The plates? No. The kids' clothes? Never. My clothes were already so old and worn that nobody would pay anything for them. What did I have? What did we have that was worth anything? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Arthur had already sold everything that was worth anything. The ring, the watch, the tools. There was nothing left. I sat on the living room floor and looked at those baskets of clothes, at those dresses. More work. Always more work. And it was never enough. Never came close to being enough. The kids came running in, coming back from Mrs. Geraldine's house. Adam, the youngest, came running and jumped in my lap. Mom, we played hide-and-seek today, and I won. I hugged my son, felt his little smell, that smell of a child who played all day. I kissed his little head. How was I going to let that monster threaten my babies? How? That's great, my love. You're very smart. Wesley came after, more serious. He was finding it strange. I noticed in his look. He was a child, but he was smart. He was noticing something was very wrong. Mom, why are you working so much? It's to save some extra money, my son, so we can buy nice things for you. He looked at me with those big eyes, doubting, but didn't insist. Thank God he didn't insist, because if he insisted, I don't know if I could have held back the tears. I made a quick dinner, potatoes, green beans, and fried egg. That's what we had. I put the kids to eat. Arthur arrived from work, sat at the table, but barely touched the food. He was getting worse every day, thinner, more dejected, more absent. It was like watching someone die slowly in front of you. After dinner, I bathed the kids, put them to bed, and then went to the wash tub. 5 baskets of clothes to wash. I lit the lamp because it was already dark. The water from the tap was freezing. It was winter, September. The nights were cold, but I couldn't wait for the sun to rise. I didn't have time. I scrubbed, wrung, rinsed one piece after another. My hands were raw. There were wounds between my fingers from scrubbing clothes on the stone so much. It hurt every time I dipped my hands in the water, but I kept going. I had to keep going. I finished washing almost at midnight. I hung everything on the clothesline, even knowing it wouldn't dry by morning because the night was humid. But at least it was washed. I went inside. Arthur was sitting in the dark in the living room. He hadn't even lit the lamp. He just stayed there in the dark, looking at nothing. I walked right past him, went to the bedroom, sat at the sewing machine. 4 dresses to alter. I started taking apart the first one. My eyes were burning from sleep. My vision was blurred, but I had to do it. I had to finish. I sewed until 3 in the morning. I managed to finish 1.5 dresses. I collapsed in bed without even taking off my clothes. I slept 2 hours. At 5, I was up again. That's how the 8th day passed, and the 9th and the 10th. On the 10th day, I was ironing when Mrs. Geraldine appeared at my door. She had a worried face. "Dorothy, I need to talk to you." I left the iron aside and invited her in. She sat in the kitchen chair and looked at me with that face of someone who's going to say something difficult. "Dorothy, what's happening? You look terrible. You've lost weight. You have dark circles down to your chin. Your hands are all hurt. And Arthur is even worse. He looks like a walking corpse. The kids are starting to ask me if their mother is sick. What's going on?" I couldn't take it. I broke down crying right there in front of her. I cried so much I couldn't even speak right. She hugged me, kept stroking my hair as if I were a child. When I managed to control myself a bit, I told her. I told her everything. She listened in silence, and when I finished, she sighed deeply. "My God in heaven, Dorothy, why didn't you tell me before? What could you have done? You don't have all that money either." "I don't, but I could have helped you in other ways. Look, I'm going to keep the children all day from now on. You don't even need to pay me. You work, do what you need to do, and I'll take care of them. At least I can do that." That relieved me a bit. At least I didn't need to worry anymore about picking up and dropping off the kids all the time. I could focus just on work. "And another thing," she continued, "I'm going to spread around the neighborhood that you're taking sewing and washing work. I'll talk to everyone I know. Who knows, maybe more work will appear." I thanked her from the bottom of my heart. It was little, But it was something. It was someone helping me without judging me, without turning their back on me. And more work really did appear. Mrs. Eulalia called me to wash 3 baskets of clothes. Mrs. Benedita gave me 2 dresses to mend. Mr. Manuel from the store ordered an embroidered tablecloth to give as a gift to his wife. Every job that appeared was a momentary relief, a little more money coming in, but it was also more load, more hours of work, less sleep, more pain. On the 11th day, I woke up and couldn't get out of bed. My body simply didn't obey, my legs had no strength, my arms didn't move right. I stayed there lying down, looking at the ceiling, and thought, it's over. My body gave up. It can't take it anymore. But then I heard it. I heard Adam talking in the next room. Sis, do you think Mom is sick? And Nancy answered, I don't know, but she's very tired. We have to be good and not make a mess so we don't make her more tired. My children, my babies worried about me, trying to be good not to give me more work. And that monster Joe had threatened them. He had said he'd come after them if we didn't pay. I forced my body to get up. I forced my legs to support me. I forced my arms to move. I got up, washed my face, tied my hair, put on clothes, went to the kitchen, made coffee, prepared breakfast. I couldn't give up, didn't have the right to give up. My children depended on me. I spent that whole day washing clothes and sewing. I didn't even eat lunch right. I ate half a piece of bread with coffee. I kept working. My hands were bleeding. There were blisters that burst and became wounds. Every movement hurt, but I continued. On the 12th day, Arthur finally spoke to me. He was sitting at the table, moving his food around without eating, when suddenly he looked up and said, Dorothy, how much do we have now? I went to the bedroom, took the tin where I was keeping the money I was managing to save. I counted. $740. 740. He did the math in his head. There was still 1,660 missing. There are 3 days left, he whispered. It won't be enough. It won't. It will, I answered, even knowing it was a lie. I'll manage. I will. Dorothy, he started and I saw tears streaming down his face. When Joe comes here, when he comes, take the children and run. Go to your sister's house. Let him do whatever he wants with me. But you and the children run. Nobody's going to run. And he's not coming here because I'm going to get the money. But I was lying to him and to myself. I knew I wasn't going to make it. It was mathematically impossible. Even if I worked 24 hours a day, even if I didn't sleep a single minute, it wouldn't be enough. There was no way. But I had to try. I had to do the maximum I could, even if it was useless, even if it was impossible. On the 13th day, I had a desperate idea, an idea that embarrassed me just thinking about it, but it was the only thing I had left. Borrow money from another loan shark, use debt to pay debt. I knew it was crazy. I knew it would only delay the problem, not solve it, but it would buy time. Maybe with more time, I could manage to save the money to pay. I asked Mrs. Geraldine if she knew any loan shark besides Joe. She looked at me scared. Dorothy, have you gone crazy? You want to dig yourself into an even deeper hole? I have no choice. There are 2 days left. 2 days, and I only have $800. What do I do, Mrs. Geraldine? What do I do? She kept thinking, biting her lip, clearly divided between helping me and protecting me from myself. Finally, she sighed. There's Black Charlie. He lends money too, but he's even worse than Joe. The interest is higher and he's more violent, much more violent. Where do I find him? Dorothy? Where? She gave me the address. A bar in the poorest area of town, near the train tracks. Dangerous place, especially for a woman alone. That afternoon, I put on my least worn dress, tied my hair, and went. My heart was beating erratically. I was afraid, very afraid, but desperation was greater than fear. I arrived at the bar. It was a dirty place, dark, stinking of whiskey and cigarettes. There were some men drinking at the counter. When I entered, everyone stopped and looked at me. I felt the weight of those looks, looks that undressed me, that judged me, that made me feel dirty. I asked for Black Charlie. One of the men pointed to the back. I crossed the room with shaky legs. There in the back, sitting at a small table, was him, a huge man, black, with a scar on his face, thick arms full of tattoos. I approached. He looked up at me. "What do you want?" "I need money lent." He laughed, a laugh that gave me chills. "You, a housewife. How much?" $1,600. He stopped laughing. He looked at me seriously. "That's a lot of money." "What do you want with so much money?" "To pay my husband's debt." I nodded. He shook his head, laughing again. "Let me see if I understand. Your husband owes someone and you want to borrow from me to pay? You know I charge 40% interest per month, right? You know that'll become more than $2,000 in a month?" I knew. Of course I knew. But what else could I do? I know, but I need time. I just need a little more time. He looked me up and down, slowly, shamelessly, and then smiled. A smile that made me nauseous. "You're kind of pretty, a bit worn out, but still useful. I'll lend the money, but you're going to pay in another way too." I understood what he was suggesting. I felt my stomach turn. I felt like vomiting right there. "No," I said, my voice trembling. "Just the money. I'll pay with work. I'll work for you. I'll clean, cook, wash, whatever you want. But not that." He shrugged. "Then there's no money. Simple as that." I ran out of that bar, running as if the devil was chasing me. I got home, locked the door, and collapsed on the kitchen floor, crying from desperation, from humiliation, from defeat. There was nowhere else to run, nothing else to do, no way out. We were finished. Arthur was in the bedroom. I heard him crying too. Both of us crying in different rooms of the same destroyed house. The kids were still at Mrs. Geraldine's house, thank God. They didn't need to see their mother and father like that. They didn't need to feel the weight of that tragedy that had befallen our family. I stayed there on the floor, I don't know for how long, until I heard knocks on the door. Hard knocks, violent. My heart stopped. It was him, Joe. He had come before the deadline. He had come to destroy us. I got up trembling. Arthur came out of the bedroom pale as a ghost. We looked at each other. This was the end. This was the moment we feared so much. The knocks continued harder, more insistent. I took a deep breath, fixed my hair, wiped the tears from my face. If it was going to end, let it end. But I was going to face it with my head held high. I wasn't going to lower myself. I wasn't going to beg. I had done everything within my power, absolutely everything. I opened the door. When I opened that door, prepared to see Joe's thugs, prepared to see the end of my family, what I saw was Mrs. Isabella, that rich lady who had received me at her house, who had given me work but had refused the loan. She was there at my door with a bag in her hand and a face I couldn't decipher. "Mrs. Isabella," I managed to speak, confused. "Dorothy, can I come in?" I opened the door, let her in. Arthur was standing in the middle of the living room, looking like a ghost. She looked at him, then at me, and sat in our old chair without waiting for an invitation. "Dorothy, I haven't been able to stop thinking about your situation since you came to my house. I lost sleep thinking about you, about your children. I spoke to my husband about the case. He's a lawyer, as you know, and he told me something I didn't know. My heart was racing. I didn't understand where she was going with this. Joe is a criminal. What he does is illegal. Loan sharking is a crime, and the threats he made against your family are also a crime. My husband said you can report him, that you don't need to pay this debt." Arthur and I looked at each other. "Report? Go to the police." Would that make Joe stop or make everything worse? "Mrs. Isabella," I said, my voice trembling. "The police won't do anything. Half the cops in town work for him. If I report, he'll find out, and then he'll really come destroy us." She shook her head. "Not the police here, the state police. My husband has contacts in the capital. He can make the report reach the right hands, the hands of people who will really investigate, who will arrest Joe." It seemed too good to be true. It seemed impossible, but at the same time it was a light a tiny light at the end of that dark tunnel. "But that takes time," I said. "The deadline is in 2 days. He won't wait for an investigation, won't wait for anything. He'll come here." "I know," she answered. "That's why I brought this." She opened the bag and took out an envelope. A thick envelope. She placed it on the table. "There's $1,800 here." I kept staring at that envelope as if it were an apparition. $1,800, almost everything we needed, but you said you couldn't lend it. "It's not a loan," she interrupted. "It's advance payment. You're going to work for me for the next 2 years. You'll sew, wash, iron, do everything I need." I calculated what the value of 2 years of work would be, discounting what you've already done. It comes to this. Do you accept? 2 years. 2 years working for her. It was a lot, it was heavy, but it was salvation. "I accept," I said without thinking twice. "I accept, yes, ma'am." She smiled, that kind smile of hers. "Great. And another thing, my husband is going to file the complaint against Joe tomorrow. If everything goes well, in a few weeks, he'll be in jail. You won't need to be afraid of him ever again." It seemed like a dream. It seemed impossible that this was happening. After 2 weeks of desperation, of work until exhaustion, of doors closed in my face, finally someone was extending their hand. Finally, there was hope. She got up, smoothed her dress, and looked at me with those kind eyes. "One last thing, Dorothy. Your husband needs help. Gambling is a disease. It's an addiction. There's a group at the Catholic Church on Central Square every Wednesday at 7 in the evening. It's a group for people with addictions. He needs to go there, needs to get treatment, otherwise this will happen again." I looked at Arthur. He had his head down, ashamed, but nodded slightly. He would go. He had to go. When Mrs. Isabella left, Arthur and I stood there, looking at that envelope on the table. $1,800. Adding with the $800 I had managed to save, it came to $2,600. It was more than we owed. It was our salvation. But it wasn't just the money. It was the fact that someone had believed in me. Someone had seen my desperation, my struggle, and had decided to help me. Not out of pity, but because they saw I was hardworking, that I was honest, that I deserved a chance. That night, after so long, I slept. I really slept. A heavy sleep, deep. One of those where you wake up the next day and don't even know what time it is. When I woke up, it was almost noon. The kids were at Mrs. Geraldine's house. Arthur had gone to work. I got up, washed my face, looked at myself in the mirror. I was unrecognizable. I had lost so much weight that my face was sunken. The dark circles were deep, purple. I had wrinkles that weren't there before. I had aged 10 years in 2 weeks, but I was alive. My family was saved, and that's what mattered. The next day, Saturday, Arthur and I went together to the warehouse where Joe stayed. My heart was in my mouth. Even with the money in my purse, I was afraid. Afraid he wouldn't accept, afraid he'd want more. Afraid he'd do something to us right there. The place was horrible, an old warehouse, dark, smelling of mold and cigarettes. There were 2 big men at the entrance, arms crossed, looking at us with suspicion. Arthur said we wanted to speak with Joe. They frisked us with those rough hands, touching me in a way that made me feel dirty. But I endured it. I was there for my children. Joe was sitting in a chair at the back of the warehouse, smoking a thick cigar. He was a short man, fat, with dark hair slicked back with brilliantine. He wore an expensive suit, incongruous in that dirty place. When he saw us, he smiled, a smile that had nothing friendly about it. "Arthur, I was just going to come collect today." "Bring my money?" Arthur was trembling beside me. I took a step forward. "We brought it. It's all here." I took the money out of my purse, the $2,400. I counted bill by bill on the dirty table in front of him. He counted along with those fat fingers full of gold rings. When he finished counting, he looked at me. "It's right. But let me give you some advice, pretty lady. If your husband comes asking me for money again, I won't lend it. And if he comes, you'll find out, because next time The interest will be double and the deadline half. Understood? I understand, but he's never coming back. He shrugged, put the money in a drawer, and dismissed us with a hand gesture. We left that place almost running. Only when I was on the street again, with the sun hitting my face, could I breathe right. It was over. The debt was paid. The threat had passed. We were free. Arthur fell to his knees right there on the street and started crying from relief, from shame, from everything together. People passed and looked, but I didn't care. I put my hand on his shoulder. Get up. Let's go home. Let's start over. In the months that followed, life was difficult, very difficult. I worked for Mrs. Isabella almost every day. I sewed, washed, ironed, cleaned. I came home exhausted, but it was different now. It was tiredness from honest work. It was tiredness with purpose. It wasn't desperation. Arthur started attending the meetings at the church. Every Wednesday, religiously, he went. At first, it was hard. He'd come home after the meetings, quiet, head down, clearly fighting with his inner demons. But slowly, week after week, I saw him improve. I saw life coming back to his eyes. I saw him start smiling again, playing with the kids, hugging me lovingly. One day, about 3 months after that whole story, he came home and told me, "Dorothy, I want you to know something. I'm never going to gamble again, never. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for what I did to you, to our children. Did you hear me? The rest of my life." And he kept it. He really kept it. During the 54 years we had together until the day God took him in 2022, he never bet a single cent on anything again. Never lied to me again. Never disappeared. He became the man I had married, or rather, he became an even better man, because now he knew the value of what he had, knew what he had almost lost. As for Joe, Mrs. Isabella's husband really filed the complaint. It took about 5 months, but the state police came, investigated, gathered evidence. One day we woke up and the news was in the paper. Joe had been arrested. He and 3 of his thugs had been found with illegal weapons in the warehouse, fake documents, money with no origin. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. The whole community breathed relieved. How many families had that man destroyed? How many lives had he ruined? And now he was in jail, paying for what he had done. I worked for Mrs. Isabella for those 2 years I had promised. I worked hard, with dedication, with gratitude. She was always fair with me, always respectful, always kind. When the 2 years ended, she called me to her house and said, "Dorothy, you're the best employee I've ever had. Honest, hard-working, meticulous. I'd like you to continue working for me, not as debt payment, but as a real employee with a fixed salary every month. What do you think?" I accepted. Of course I accepted. I worked for her for 8 more years until she and her husband moved to the capital. In those years, I managed to save money. Real money. Arthur had also gotten a promotion at the factory, was earning better. We saved, economized, kept every cent. And you know what we did? We bought our house, our own house, small, simple, but ours. In 1975, 7 years after that tragedy, we finally realized the dream that had been destroyed by Arthur's bets. When we entered that house for the first time as owners, I cried. I cried remembering everything we had been through, how hard it had been, how I had fought, how we had survived. The kids grew up. Wesley graduated in accounting. Nancy became a teacher. Adam became a mechanic. All 3 built their lives, their families. They gave me grandchildren, great-grandchildren, a beautiful family, big, united. And you know what's funny? None of them knows this story. Arthur and I decided never to tell. It was too painful a chapter. It was a shame we carried alone, without sharing with them. Maybe we should have told, maybe they could have learned from our mistakes, but at the time, we thought it was better this way, to leave that buried in the past. But now, at 92 years old, with Arthur already resting for 3 years, I decided it was time to tell. Because this story isn't just about pain. It's not just about mistakes. It's not just about tragedy. This story is about overcoming. It's about strength. It's about never giving up, even when everything seems lost. Those 2 weeks in 1968 were the worst of my life. I worked until my body screamed for mercy. I cried until I had no more tears. I was afraid like I had never been before. I thought everything was over. I thought I was going to lose everything, but I didn't because I didn't let it. Because I fought, because I went after it, because I didn't accept defeat. And because in the darkest moment, when I had no more strength, someone appeared who extended their hand. Mrs. Isabella, may God keep her in a good place, was an angel in my life, an angel who saved me when I needed it most. This story taught me many things. It taught me that we never know what we're capable of until we're tested. It taught me that love for family can give us strength we didn't even imagine we had. It taught me that it's always worth fighting, even when the chances are minimal. And it taught me that sometimes help comes from where we least expect. If you're going through some difficulty now, if you're thinking there's no way out, if you're thinking about giving up, I want you to know, don't give up. Fight one more day, one more hour, one more minute, because you never know when the solution will appear. You never know when the sun will rise again. That Saturday when the watchman told me the truth was the worst day of my life, but it was also the day that started my transformation. It was the day I discovered I was stronger than I ever imagined I could be. It was the day I stopped being just Dorothy, housewife, and became Dorothy the warrior, the Dorothy who doesn't give up, the Dorothy who protects her family above all. Arthur made a mistake, made a big mistake, almost destroyed everything. But he recognized the mistake, truly repented, truly changed, and spent the rest of his life making up for it. And I forgave him. It wasn't easy, it wasn't quick, but I forgave him because I realized that holding a grudge would destroy me inside, would poison my soul, and I wasn't going to let that bad story steal anything more from me. It had already stolen too much. Today, when I look back at those terrible days of September 1968, I see a woman I barely recognize, a desperate woman, scared, exhausted, but I also see a warrior, a survivor, a winner. And that's what I am. That's what I've always been. I just needed that storm to discover it. So, my dear, whoever you are listening to me now, you're also stronger than you imagine. You also have inside you a strength that only appears when needed. And when the storm comes in your life, because it will come sooner or later, you'll discover it. You'll be surprised by your own courage, by your own resilience, by your own ability to overcome. Life knocked me down many times, but I always got up, always dusted myself off, always kept walking. And that's why I'm here today at 92 years old, with health, with family, with a story to tell. It wasn't easy, it never is, but it was worth it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of desperation, it was worth it because I got to the other side and you will too. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for sharing this story with me. And always remember, while there's life, there's hope. While there's love, there's strength to continue. And while there's faith, there's reason to believe that better days will come, because they always do. Always. May God bless you, and may you never, never give up on your dreams, on your family, on yourself. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. A kiss on each of your hearts, and until the next story.